Hello, everybody. I'm sorry I cannot be with you today, but I'll try to give my little contribution to the debate, providing some insights on carbon pricing and implications for local authorities, taken from some of my projects and focusing mainly at the city level. As you know, the urban climate governance is a never-evolving landscape. Urban areas play a central role in global climate mitigation efforts. Cities are considered to be responsible for around 70% of global CO2 and methane emissions, and the top 25 cities account for more than half of total greenhouse gas emissions. For this reason, climate change governance has increasingly moved from international arenas to local and regional spheres, also because of the place-specific nature of climate responses. What's more, organizations like C40 cities show how transnational networks of cities can bridge governance gaps and fill the gap that we need to fill. An increasing number of cities have pledged to become carbon neutral. However, as the map shows, most of them tend to postpone the target to 2050 or to some unspecified long term. For this reason, without robust monitoring mechanisms, symbolic commitment may end up undermining public trust. Focusing on Europe, this map shows the 100 cities participating in the EU mission for climate neutral and smart cities by 2030. As you see, they are scattered all over Europe, mainly in Italy, Germany, France, and Spain. If we enlarge the geographical scope from the city level to the province level, I think an interesting case study is provided by the province of Siena, my hometown. Siena is a very small city, 50,000 people, but with a large province that encompasses a vast area. And in 2011, it was certified as the first carbon neutral province, the first vast world area to have this certification. So greenhouse gas emissions fully compensated by local forest ecosystem, a result of a pilot project of the University of Siena with the local authorities. I call it in the title net zero ante litteram because the concept of net zero, the terminology didn't exist yet, but that's what basically is. And Siena has become a role model for other cities for this very reason. However, you might argue that Siena is a small town and this cannot be replicated and upscaled. That is why with my team at UI and other teams in the Horizon project Capable, we look at the policymakers' climate action and perspectives, focusing on 5 large European cities: Barcelona, Berlin, Milan, Paris, and Prague. The selection criteria we adopted were size, EU relevance, geographical positions scattered in Europe, and diverse governance systems. And we perform interviews with policymakers with the aim of understanding how institutional setups and competencies influence climate mitigation policies. What emerged from the interviews is that urban climate policies often integrate diverse strategies ranging from emission reduction targets to sustainable mobility and land use planning. In particular, sustainable mobility and tourism policies were often mentioned as critical components of urban climate strategies. And local climate finance and carbon pricing can play a key role for these policies. As to the local climate finance, financial options can provide a useful tool for tourism. In a nutshell, tourists could purchase a financial option that gives them the right to be reimbursed if environmental quality turns out to be below a given threshold, a sort of, if you want, a refundable entry tax. The revenues, once collected by the local government, could be used to subsidize local firms that invest in clean technologies and help keep the environmental quality above the threshold. So this mechanism, we prove, could occur at no cost for the public administration. In a similar vein, rather than going for a general city tax, we could go for a clean city tax, in which the revenues are collected by the local government and are earmarked, so recycled for sustainable mobility projects. At the same time, sustainable mobility can be used to attract tourists. For instance, one could imagine a tourist bonus, a tourist discount for tourists who use public transport to get to the city rather than use their own cars, thus reducing also traffic volumes. The other main instrument is carbon pricing. And as you know, Europe has gone very much for that with the EU ETS 2, a new cap and trade system that will apply to building, road transport, and small industry emitters. The diagram on the top right clearly explains the reason why this shift was proposed. The top two sectors, power and industry, experience a remarkable reduction in their emissions, 47% since the beginning of the EU ETS in 2005. But the other sectors didn't improve much or not at all. In some cases, like transport in yellow, actually emissions increased. So Europe decided to go for a EU ETS 2. They will start in 2027, possibly 28, if prices will be very high in 26, with a stability reserve mechanism that is similar to the one applied in the EU ETS, but with a different feature, a price cap at 45 euros if prices get above 45 euros for 3 consecutive years. New allowances will be released. And the cap will be progressively reduced with an overall reduction of 42% by 2030 compared to 2005. With a colleague from EY, Jacopo Cammeo, we tried to estimate the expected impact of the EU ETS 2 on Italian firms. We found it to be relatively small, less than 1% of Italian average income. Obviously, it's an average, so it might have an impact which differs across different sectors of the population. That's why Europe also envisaged a social climate fund, expected to raise 86 billion euros between 26 and 32, and much of this money could be used for transport projects, transport users, and to move to zero and low emissions mobility. From the interviews we conducted with policymakers, we find that carbon pricing and regulation are perceived as effective, but yet politically sensitive tools. And also the urban form profoundly influence emissions. Compact city models combined with a renewable energy and electrified transport can yield significant reductions. And these reductions can be further enhanced by integrated policies like the one in Barcelona, which combines transport and congestion measures. And talking about Barcelona, it has become a reference point for urban climate innovation to its participatory climate strategies and superblock initiative. Across Europe, many cities are key laboratories for climate action, but they are often limited by institutional constraints. Cities are frequently first movers in climate innovation, but somehow obstacled by the multi-level system. So strengthening multi-level coordination is essential for achieving long-term climate goals. We need to align municipal, regional, national policies if we want to have effective mitigation. So, in a nutshell, I believe that cities are key to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. For this reason, sustainable mobility and tourism measures, also fighting over tourism, are needed. And carbon pricing and local climate finance can be useful levers for this purpose. In general, there is a great potential to act on climate activities at urban level, but at the same time, this potential so far appears to be tapped by the existing rules. So what we need is a better interaction among the different policy levels in terms of coherence between the plannings at different levels, coherence between specific, unambiguous regulation with clear definition and intervention guidelines, in terms of bottom-up approaches, so more participatory approaches, listening to cities' needs and experiences, and finally, more money. Cities need to be empowered to better act in climate activity. I think these measures are all needed because cities are needed to get to climate neutrality by 2050, and they can have a key role. And on this note, I will conclude, and I thank you all for your attention.